What's happening, guys? Welcome back to Radical Football. Welcome back to another episode of the Manchester United Fans Corner. I'm your host, Shegun, and guys, it's great to be back here with you. We had an amazing time last week. We discussed a lot about the Ineos strategy, the decision not to overpay, so we discussed a lot of things about the need for quality over just quantity and the history of United as regards that midfield reinforcement. So a lot of discussions we had last week. Enjoyable discussions, really. I got a lot of feedback and exciting feedback, some pleasant, some not pleasant, but it's part of what we do. Our own is just to say what we see and to analyze what we see. But guys, if you've not watched that video, please, I'll attach the video at the end of this. Please try and do that. You will enjoy yourself. Amazing video. A lot of enjoyable and touchy topics that we had there. So guys, let's go into today's analysis. We want to analyze a player. First and foremost, for me, I would have thought that by this period of the window, we shouldn't be analyzing new players. I'd planned that by this type of window, I'll just be doing a much more extensive analysis on the midfielders that I expected we'll be going for. But the window is not what you planned. Everything is not how we planned it or how we thought it would be. So we have to analyze a new midfielder. And the person we're analyzing today is no one else than Andrey Santos of Chelsea. Reports have come out that United they are exploring a deal for Andrey Santos of Chelsea, and that Chelsea will be willing to let him go. And the fee touted is around close to £50 million. So guys, let's jump right into it. As usual, what we do is we look at the qualities of Andrey Santos, and then we look at the qualities that United need, and then we see, is there a match, right? Is there a match into what we need, and how can it fit, if at all it fits? So, but before I go ahead to analyze him, I must give this announcement and to kind of like state my own a little bit of bias in a way, in the sense of I've always said to my guys, I've always said to people that know me and people that we've discussed even online, that if I thought I was to pick two players from Chelsea, I will pick Caicedo and I will pick Andrey Santos. I've always said I love watching Andrey Santos. So for me, it's not difficult to analyze him. And I'm not saying because I love him, United should buy him. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying he's a player I've always liked. He's a player I've watched. He's a player I know the profile offhand in terms of I've seen what he brings to the game. And so for me, it's always easy to analyze him. It's always something that it's not going to take me enough time to watch clips, and because I've watched him a lot and I know him. So guys, let's jump right to it. Let's analyze Andrey Santos. So let me start by saying that a football club, a football team, is always in a constant process of rebuild. And I understand when football fans say something like, oh, we are in a rebuilding process. It's not that you're in a rebuilding process. A football club is always, or a football team is always in a rebuilding process. The only thing is, the rebuild you are doing, is it major or minor? Right? And I think that's what we now determine how you should analyze your rebuild. So a footballing club is always in a rebuilding process. It's just that in this particular position, in these particular positions in your club, are you undergoing a major rebuild or a minor rebuild? So there are 4 questions you need to always ask yourself, or the club needs to ask themselves, fans need to ask themselves when it comes to a rebuild. 4 questions. The first question is, what kind of rebuild are we doing? At this particular window, in this particular position, especially the midfield, in the case of Manchester United, the first question to ask ourselves is, what kind of rebuild are we doing? Is it major rebuild? Is it minor rebuild? And obviously for United, it's a major rebuild. Casemiro has left the club. As United currently, we only have 2, based on official announcements now, because Ederson has not been officially announced, but based on official announcement, we only have 2 midfielders. Maybe by tomorrow, the official announcement might be made by the club, but currently, as we are speaking, it is 2 midfielders, Coutinho and Bruno Fernandes. So obviously, it's a major rebuild. The second question to ask yourself is, if it's a major rebuild, what kinds of players should we be looking at? What kind of quality should we be looking at if it's a major rebuild? And me, I've always believed that in all rebuilds, whether major or minor, the aim of every rebuild is to improve, first of all, to maintain the quality of your squad and to improve upon it. That's the major objective, to maintain and to improve. And if it's a major rebuild, it means you want to try as much as possible to maintain and increase the quality of your squad immediately. A major and an emergency rebuild immediately. But whereas if it's a minor or long-term view of a rebuild, it could be to bring in players that might not necessarily walk into the first 11 immediately, but with time, 1 or 2 years, they grow into the role and they do well. That is understandable. And for me, I've always believed that United's rebuild, first and foremost, is about matching up to the quality that Casemiro gave us in that position. Because already I said we have Bruno, we have Kobe Mainoo, and improving upon it. And because you would agree with me if you're objective, and I believe a lot of our fans are objective people, that even in Casemiro in our midfield still had issues. Right? Casemiro, fantastic servant for the club, amazing player. Did what he did for the club. We appreciate him. We sang his praise a lot of time here. But the question is, the fact is, even when Casemiro was in our club, the midfield still had evident challenges and evident issues. So our target for this window is not just maintaining the quality, even though that's number one, that Casemiro has left us now. We'll maintain that quality, but we have to improve upon it. And so the kinds of players we go for are players that should, no matter how talented they are, at least I believe we should go for 2 players, and I've said it many times, that should come into our squad, immediately improve the levels of our squad, and improve upon it. And so that's the second point. Who do you buy? Who do you buy? You know, what trajectory should we be looking at? Is it somebody coming immediately to improve, or somebody that comes, you know, and take 1 or 2 years or 3 years before they hit their potential? So those are the things. The third one is, what are you willing to pay for that quality? I think that's what we've been having a lot of discussion, a lot of heated words have been exchanged in the fan base in terms of if you're looking for a quality that's going to come in and quickly meet up the quality you had before, that Casemiro had brought to the club before, and improve upon it. What are you willing to pay? That's the second and third question. What are you willing to pay for that quality that immediately comes in? That's the third question, and I think a lot of heated words have been said about that. And number fourth one is, who and what are you willing to let go? You know, in terms of all your targets, right? In the rebuild, who within your team within your squad, are you willing to let go? In this case, for Manchester United, Casemiro obviously has left. But now, in the market, which of the targets are you willing to let slide? United currently has let the likes of Elliot Anderson slide, the likes of Martin Fernandes slide, and Tonali slide, because that they believe they can let those slide. So these are the 4 questions. But for me, I think I'm more focused on the second one. We need midfielders that come into this squad, maintain the level we had with Casemiro, and improve upon it. That's what I believe. I believe we should have 2 midfielders to do that, because obviously Casemiro was the one, Ugarte wasn't up to the level. So we have to get at least 2 to meet up and improve the level. And I don't think we are approaching the window that way. I think we're just focused on the third point, which is what we should pay. Right? I think we are focused on that. We're not focused on bringing quality in that, you know, matches and improves us. But let's go into a boy that I like so much, which is Andrey Santos. Let's analyze Andrey Santos. What does he bring? First and foremost, for Andrey Santos, I think off the ball. Let me start with off the ball. Andrey Santos is one of those players, and I think he has a lot of similarity off the ball to João Gomez at Wolves, right? I think João Gomez, that's the name at Wolves. I think João Gomez currently, I think based on reports, is moving close to Atletico Madrid. I think they both have a little bit of similarity in that, in the sense of off the ball, they are comfortable in those tight spaces in terms of duels, tackles. In those tight spaces, they excel well in terms of duels, in terms of tackles. And also, with the same way with João Gomez, in a way, when it comes to those close tackles, they also excel in those close situations, tight situations, those passes. And I feel that's one of the things that, you know, you have to first notice about Andrey Santos in terms of close duels, the tackles, the dispossessions in tight spaces, and also the passes he's able to pass in tight spaces. And obviously, another thing about him, that's Andrey Santos in terms of good passes. I think when you look at him, you see that his passes are and it's also with the way of even João Gomez also, as I said, in terms of the weight of touch is always good. That's Andrey Santos' weight of touch is always good. The weight of pass of Andrey Santos is also very, very good. In terms of when Andrey Santos passes the ball, from what I've seen about him and watched about him, it is difficult for the receiver to receive the ball. I think it's not something that it's the right weight. So it's not something that you place the ball and it's difficult for the receiver to receive. You know, I think I had a complaint about that in terms of likes of Alex Scott having, links to even though it's fast and direct, but the weight is always too powerful sometimes. But for Andrey Santos, the weight of touch is quite good. It's quite good. Obviously, it's line-breaking passes. I think when you look at him, especially in situations where there's a low block, they're having possession, the ability to pin it in nice situations. I think that's an amazing quality of his. And I believe the ease to do it is very nice. The line-breaking passes, the ease to do it is very, very nice. And the consistency to which he does it in a 90-minute period is also very, very nice. You can see him punching. There are players that maybe at the beginning of the game, they could do those passes, but maybe when they are tired, they don't do as much. But what I've seen about him is there's still a little bit of consistency to do it at various moments of the game. And I think I like that about him. And I believe also, that the use of both feet, even though we know that Andrey Santos' major feet is the right, but I believe in certain moments I see maybe taking a shot with it, a pass, where you like, I get the fact that this guy, at least, and I like that about players where you can use both feet. I think it's a very, very good quality of it. Now, let's come to what position does he play? Because that's the argument. Some people are like, oh, I think he can play as a 6. Some people are saying it's an 8. I believe that obviously can play as an 8. We've seen that at Chelsea. Obviously can also play as a 6. We've seen that in certain moments also. But I believe for me that he's not your stationary number 6. I think when you look at him, he's not your stationary number 6. He's someone that would be, a number 6 that has high mobility. Let me put it that way. So in terms of, it's not your stationary 6 that will just shield, that your anchor that will just shield. It's someone that would still love to move. And I always felt when I watch Andrey Santos, I've always felt that the best position for Andrey Santos, in my own analysis, is as a number 8. And I believe that because when you look at him also, the qualities he has in terms of even arriving, I think he does that well. I think he does that way. He has that quality to arrive. And I think it's something that, yes, he has to improve on it, but I believe he has that quality to arrive well in the half spaces. I've seen that a little bit of him, but I believe he can still do that more. He has that quality to arrive. And I've seen that even his mobility in terms of the ability for him to counter press situations, to follow players that to move into certain zones. I believe he can do that. And I'm like, I don't see the guy as a stationary 6. I see him more as a number 8. But obviously it depends on what the manager wants him to do. But I've always seen him that way. I believe the guy is more of a number 8. So another thing about him is when he, obviously, in situations where he decides to, in build-up situations, I've always felt that he's someone that always acts as another outlet to the team. So, for example, let's assume it's a Chelsea, for example. Let's assume, Caicedo is one to receive the ball and build up with the ball. I've always felt it's not just someone to stay ahead of Caicedo and expect that the ball is passed to him. I've seen in certain situations where he causes difficulties for the opponent. And I think I remember there was a game against Chelsea, against Man City. The first half that game against Man City when Liam Rosinho was the manager of Chelsea. The first leg of the Premier League game between Man City and Chelsea, which Chelsea had a very good first half. I saw those moments where it was causing problems for Man City. Why? Because it was acting as another outlet to build up. And so it was difficult for Man City to deal with that situation where, Caicedo is meant to be the one to build up, but before you know it, Caicedo will try to build up. But before you know it, sometimes there's another outlet in terms of he forms that double pivot with Caicedo to receive the ball from the defensive line and build up on that situation. And it's very, very... And I feel maybe if United goes for him, that might be one quality that him and Kubmenu can bring together. Because if Kubmenu decides to say, I want to be a deep line playmaker to play, some moments, it's not just only Kubmenu that will do that role. For example, it's always, him also can come in that situation to do that role. So I've always felt it's a very good quality. And also, I've always felt also about Andrey Santos that in situations whereby you give him the ball, I think I love the way he moves, the way he receives the ball. But I've always felt that there's a lot of depending on his strength to wade off the marker. Yeah. So I look at it always, and not just even when he's receiving ball in build-up situations. I think even in his game, in tight spaces, there's always a lot more dependence on physicality to wade off. Even though I know, that is a good quality, but I wouldn't, you're not the most physical of players. And I've always said that. Even there was a player I analyzed where I said, I think Bruno Guimaraes also does that. And I'm like, I get that, but I would love it to be much more silky. I wouldn't want Premier League is a very crazy league. I wouldn't want it to be so much dependent on this. And I think that's something he can improve upon. It's a good quality, but I think it shouldn't be so much reliant on using his body to guide in tight situations. Even though it's good, I think he shouldn't rely on that more. Let's move on to other qualities of him. I think it's a decent reading of the game. Even though, as I said, in tight spaces, there's that tackle, like ability for him to tackle and collect the ball. But I think also there's a good reading of the game that he has in terms of he can read the opponent's situation and read the play of the opponent, and before the opponent pass can interject. Let's move on to another quality of his game. I think good defensive recoveries. I think I've seen situations whereby, he's not the fastest of player. He's not the fastest of player, but he's someone that in short distances, he has the endurance to do the runs in short distance. He's not the fastest of player. Doesn't have that lightning quick speed, but good athletes, in a way, good athlete, good work rate. In short distances, able to have that burst of pace and that, explosiveness in short spaces. So, for example, you see maybe someone is approaching, in counter-attack situation, is a guy that really can push, and maybe come from behind and make a tackle. But the question now is, if at all he goes to Man United, right? We understand Man United, and sometimes we can have large spaces, especially in Old Trafford, large spaces for him to cover with the way we sometimes play. And so there will be questions about, is he able to cover those distances as well as he did in Chelsea? Because we also know how Stamford Bridge is. So is he able to cover those distances? Because, as I said, it's not as quick. It's not as lightning quick, but in short distances, it's kind of explosive and it's a good athlete. So I think that's another thing we should look at. So, but ultimately, when you look at him, you can see that there is that ability and room for growth of good defensive recoveries coming from the back to make a tackle and to dispossess the opponent. So also, as I said, good work rates, the good work rates, good distribution of passes. I think he really, really has that. Now, another thing about his game also is the fact of, I've seen situations whereby, vertically, I've seen situations whereby in Chelsea, he has been asked to be the one to apply pressure on the number 6 of the opponent. I've seen situations like that. And I think even when I went to his clip a bit before doing this analysis, I also saw that in terms of the ability for him to act, in the front row press to help in putting pressure on the number 6. I think he has done that quite a number of times at Chelsea. And I think that's also a quality that he has. So, but when I look at all these qualities that he has, for me, I will keep saying it, I believe the guy is more suited to a number 8 role. And now this begs the question, if United is serious about him, if they go about him, there are many questions, but the major question is, what role does Michael Carrick see him playing as? Right? Because when I look at it, I look at the midfield pivot of Kobe Mainoo and Andrey Santos, it doesn't give me as much confidence. Yes, I understand that, yes, on the ball, in terms of tight spaces, being that a kind of midfield that will pin back the opponent in their box, right? And kind of play possession and recycle the game and try to find, piercing passes in between the lines to create chances. I think they will be good at that. But situations about defensive transitions, even though, as I said, Santos has recovery, but I don't think this recovery is as supreme as you want in that situation, and it's not someone that I would want United to just limit to a standing number 6. I think it's much better than that. So they beg the question of, how are they going to use him? How are they going to use him? What are they going for him? What do they see his role as? I think those are the questions, really. And for him, ultimately, as I said, he's a big talent. Potential is someone that I have said many times that I like. I like him as a player. I like what he brings. I like the trajectory. But I also have to say that certain parts of his game also that he needs to improve upon. For example, he loses concentration. And I think I've watched a lot of games. I can remember situations, a particular situation against, was it Everton? I watched Chelsea's game against Everton because I watched a lot of Chelsea matches in season. I tried to watch a lot of matches. And I remember, I think it was brought in, in the second half of that game, if I'm not mistaken. In that game, I think that was the second leg against Everton, where Everton won them, is it 3-0 or so, where James Garner had a fantastic game in that match. So he has the ability to lose concentration. He has the ability not to press when it's meant to press. He has those situations, and I think it's symbolic of a young player. is symbolic of a young player in terms of the inconsistencies in the game. And that's one of the things I want to say. I'm not in case it's transfer, because I believe there's a prospect there, even though I know that United should be going for a more ready-made player because of the kind of quality we need on our team. But if United decides to go for him, I'm not against it, but I want to tell you, my fans, don't expect that he does the big things in the first year. Don't expect that he does the big thing even in the second year. I think he needs much more time to cut out those excesses in terms of lack of concentration, in terms of the areas he needs to fine-tune. But obviously, you can see the qualities there. Obviously, you can see that this is a guy that will work when he's given the opportunity. This is a guy that has good qualities on the ball, good qualities in certain pressing situations, good qualities in terms of defensively. I believe he will really do that. I believe he will do that. So, but I think it's a signing where I would say good prospect, good talent. If Chelsea decides to sell at a good price, but you have to be patient with him. Even though I believe we should be going for much more ready-made quality in this window. But guys, I think these are quite few things I would say about him. Let me have your opinion about Andrey Santos. What do you think about his game? Do you like the move? You know, because obviously you can see United is not the link of Alex Scott and Andrey Santos shows us that United is not going for the kind of midfielders we think they should be going for. They are going for another cadre of midfielders, and maybe that's how they want to progress. And maybe they decide to get these prospects in and give them 1 or 2 years to adapt. But let me have your opinion on this guy. Let me have your opinion. What did I say? Did you disagree with? What did I say you agree with? Let's have that discussion in the comment section. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to share. Until I see you next time. Bye.